Hey, you guys ever showed up literally anywhere and been kind of worried about being there?
Yeah.
And you think about the fact that you have to talk to people while you're there?
I think about it when I wake up that day, on my way there, when I'm walking out of my car to the establishment.
And then for at least 30 minutes after you leave, you're like analyzing everything that happened.
Yes.
Yeah.
Huh. Honestly?
Same.
We nailed it.
Same. We could harmonize.
We nailed it.
Play the song. Honestly, same.
Ooh, honestly, same.
Honestly, same.
Honestly, same.
Honestly,
Honestly,
same.
same. Honestly,
Honestly, same. Honestly, same.
Honestly, same.
Honestly, same.
Honestly, same.
Boom. Song over. You just heard it. That means it's time for a brand new episode of Honestly Same. My name is Ross.
My name is Leah.
My name is Brittany.
And you know what we're not worried about right now? Talking to all of you samesies. But in general,
That's true, though.
There have been times in our lives, would you say, that we have a bit of social anxiety?
Most of my life, yeah.
Most of your life. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, samesies, that's the topic of this week's episode. Is social anxiety in all the different forms that it comes in. But again, luckily, we don't have it here because you're not really here.
True. And neither are we.
We're not either. We're figments of
No.
your imagination.
Ooh.
You've made us up. Is it triggering your social anxiety now that we're not even real?
But you have imaginary friends.
You have an imaginary podcast that
Yeah.
lives in your head. It's
You
a pretty
really
good
should
idea,
go check
though.
that out.
You should go make this in real life because this is a good idea. I think it can make millions of dollars.
Ross, get on that.
Yeah, hey, go find me in real life. Pitch this
Yes.
concept to me.
Back to Ross, if he exists.
If I really exist in your real universe, go
could
find
say?
me. And but hey, don't be timid to walk up to me. See, segue. I'm segueing. I keep segueing.
The segue is just supposed to happen. You're not supposed to, like,
Oh, you don't say.
No.
Because then how do you guys know to ride on the Segway with me?
I
I am-
don't. I usually miss the cue, and then we
Yeah.
get somewhere else.
Well, I'm getting on the Segway right now to talk about the thing.
all right, the segue's here.
I'm still probably gonna go my own way. That's kind of my
Oh.
thing.
Gotta go
Okay.
my own way.
Way.
You could go your own
Oh,
way.
yeah. Would not be doing this in front of anyone else. Like, I know we
No.
do record this and millions of people watch. I do put that in the back of my head, and I just will do anything in front of you guys. But if I think about the millions and millions of viewers, then I get a little bit of
And
anxiety.
you're like, wow, I can't believe they're about to hear me say that thing that I said, and it's going to be forever etched in internet history.
Yes.
I mean, how do we want to kick this one off? Like, I know we have kind of different categories of social anxiety that we want to dive into, but I mean, how do we want to open this one up? Like, is it just generally kind of
I
like
think-
how socially anxious are you guys?
Are we
we
doing a scale of 1 to 10?
Yeah, like how would you blanket
Yeah.
statement here? Like, where do you feel like you're at
Mm-hmm.
in general at all times?
I would say I'm probably at like an 8 to a 9. And I think that the pandemic and staying home made it much worse for me.
Oh.
I was probably like pre-pandemic. I was probably like a 5 or a 6. My thing with it is I get like the dread. I'm not necessarily like, I don't get very like anxious, but I get like dread, which I know is like a part of it. Very much like scared to get into the like, oh, this thing is happening.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, very high end right now.
I'm always very high on myself, I would say, as well. I think that anybody that interacts with me can tell me that I'm an anxious person. I talk very quickly. I talk a lot. I am a social person, which is what makes it difficult because I am a very social person, but in most social situations, I feel like I'm like talking too much, don't know when to stop. A lot of my social anxiety, I think, comes from like childhood stuff, like that I went through in social situations where I just like have an idea of how other people perceive me. And then like maybe I had 1 or 2 people that perceived me as this thing, and it lives now in my brain of like, this is how people think of you.
Yeah.
And so it's hard for me to be around other people and not think, oh my gosh, what if they think you're annoying?
Yeah, not really
What
have
if they think
control
they're-
of
Yeah,
their
and-
perception.
I think that's part of why I'm such a people pleaser, is because I'm so worried all the time that I'm like going to be perceived as a version of me that I don't like.
Yeah.
That makes sense. I I almost don't know where I land, because I feel like there's a lot of situations that I go into feeling the general mixture of like anxiety and excitement. Because like I think we've talked about in the past before, like those feelings are there's a fine line between anxiety and excitement. It's like most of the time it might be both, depending on the situation, of course. But like, I feel like I'm always riding that line where maybe I operate at like a half, like a 4 or 5 maybe, but I feel like I am very good at turning it into like being a social person. Like I feel like because like I've done public speaking engagements where I'm literally like speaking to a room of like 200 people, and it's like when I'm getting ready for it, I'm like, oh shit, okay, this is fucking real. Like damn. But like there's never like, oh, I don't want to be here, I feel so anxiety ridden that I
see, that's me. I feel like everyone sits at whether they're gonna like fight or flight, or like what their body wants to do. And even if it's something that I signed up for, that I was excited for, whatever, a part of me is like, how do I get out of this right now? Even if I'm about to do the thing.
Oh yeah.
Like it's 5 seconds away, I'm still like, I could turn back right now.
Right, yeah. That was me recently, like the live comedy show, like Improv Wars. 5 minutes before we were about to go on stage, I was like, what the fuck? Why did we do this? Like,
why would I sign up
Why
for
do
this?
I want to do live comedy? This is so fucking stupid. And like, you hear people say it all the time, and like, I don't know what your guys' experience with it. Like Leah, probably like playing a show or something, you might have experienced this a little bit. Like, people talk about the like, as soon as you walk on a stage or walk through the curtain, it goes away. And I experienced that instantly, where I was like, I don't want to fucking do this. Like, what the hell? Why do I sign up for shit like this? Why do I have
me.
to? But then like,
Yeah, but with like going to like a friend's house.
Yes.
okay,
though.
yeah. See,
Like imagine feeling like that and being like,
and
why
going to
did I
a-
say I would go to dinner? I don't want to go to dinner.
Yeah. But it's like, but then the moment, I mean, again, I guess in a if you're going out to entertain, it's like it immediately goes away, and then I'm like, I'm fucking on, let's go. But like, I don't know. I feel like maybe back in the day I used to be a lot more social anxiety ridden.
Well, you've
but I
really
feel
like worked to have a life to where you can't like have like
That's fair.
I ended up with a lot of room to like want to be home and make that like my habit and stuff. And you worked every day to like make sure you were getting out of the house and stuff. So
Yeah, that makes sense. Where I'm even though it might give me some anxiety or worry or whatever, I am probably going out of my way to put myself in the
you
position
fight against
of,
it, to
I'm
like
like, no, let me speak in front of all these people. Let me go joke in front of these people and hope
Yeah.
it goes well or whatever. So yeah, I guess mine is probably generally lower now, I feel like, in
Yeah.
most situations.
I
But
would
again,
say like kind of going back to what you said about like a performance, like things like that. From a music standpoint, I can say for sure that like I'm such a perfectionist that I wouldn't be going on that stage if I didn't think that I could do the thing well. But the thing I can do well is the rehearsed part. But then as soon as it's like, hey, we're in between songs and I'm like the person that's standing up there and I'm like, so you guys like bread?
yeah.
I hear they have bread here, in the state that you're in.
And you're like, oh.
in
yeah,
the state that you're in, wherever we are right now.
Wherever we are in. Yeah. Wherever we are right
You're
now.
like, I'm in a state of panic. So please play the next
Constant.
song.
And I feel like that's something a lot of people actually will have rehearsed as well. Like I know a lot of people, especially when they're like running a show on like a specific time, they actually have it all like backtracked in a way where like we have this many seconds in between this song, so you're gonna literally say this thing at
Yeah.
every city.
Yeah.
And there are specific things that everybody does every time. When you're like a local band or like not to the point where like you have everything literally hashed out like that, like you're literally standing there and like, some nights it's like the energy's not there and you're like, they're having a bad time, and then you start, and you start getting whatever about it.
Yeah.
And so there were so many times where I felt so confident, and I don't know exactly what it was that made the difference. But then, there were definitely times where I was like, why do I do this? Like the
Right.
part where I'm singing, I'm like, this is what I should be doing. But the part where I'm talking, I'm like, absolutely not.
So, airline food.
Yeah.
What's
I
up
need
with that?
I need a Pete Wentz in my life, No, I think I've gotten better over time with it in general, especially like having to talk to strangers every day. Like if I'm doing hair and I'm just like meeting a new client, you kind of learn to just do that.
Yeah.
But there's also such a big difference between having like a one-on-one kind of social anxiety than there is like groups.
Yeah. Let's talk about like some specifics of like,
Yes.
so we've talked about like generally where we land on the scale, walking into any given situation. Are we mostly nervous? Are we mostly not? But like, let's talk about like specific interactions of like something like family, for
Yeah.
example. We've done a family episode in the past of like our relationships with them, all that sort of stuff. But I feel like that's an easy go-to of like, depending on your relationship with your family or where it's at, going to be around family in some situation can give you some anxiety,
Yeah.
and you almost can then have, even though it literally is your family, you can have a social anxiety of like, I don't know exactly what to say or how to talk to these
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, for sure.
where do you guys land at with, like, is that a thing where you're like, nope, yep, I experienced that? Or is it like, actually, I talk to my family pretty
It would
easy,
definitely
doesn't matter?
be like anyone that's within like what is it called when it's like your inner like
Immediate.
immediate family, that I don't have any problem. I feel like I can just be myself and say what I need to say. If someone's like crossed a line, if it's immediate family, I have no problem like standing my ground. When it's outside of the immediate family, I get a little bit of anxiety and kind of stay like more sheltered. I guess I don't have anxiety about it, but the anxiety throughout like childhood and being part of like a bigger family, I let them just like assume who I am, and I don't correct who they think I am. Part of that is anxiety and part of that is just like life. But I think that like not correcting them and who they assume, I am, good or bad,
Yeah.
what they think I like, all of that, that is like the type of thing where I'm like, it's not really like worth like correcting or like shifting their view of who they think I am. Because if I'm just like their niece or whatever, then I can just be that to them. But I'm so much like louder and like strong-willed with my immediate family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
100%.
Leah?
I would say anxiety lives in every facet of my life. So like there's definitely anxiety even with my immediate family. There are certain triggers where I feel like there's certain stuff I won't talk about with certain like people in my family. And so there is some anxiety about approaching, like we have a family vacation that we're going on next year with like my immediate family. It'll be my parents, my sisters, and like our, families. And, I have obviously lived with my immediate family before in my life, and I'm very like, as I feel like I had like a close family growing up. But I feel like just like bringing everybody together, there's definitely some anxiety of just like, oh man, like, are we all going to be able to get along? Like, am I going to feel like I need space and won't be able to get it?
And
Like,
people pleasing. I actually just took a family vacation with more than just like my household family, and I spent like a good chunk of it so stressed that people weren't having the vacation like they should have.
Yeah.
And like really wanting to be like somehow I'm the pillar of the whole family, which is not true. It's just like
right,
an
but it's
anxiety
like,
thing.
Yeah, it's something that you place this thing on yourself. Like, I have to make sure everybody's having a good time. And I definitely feel that. And then with my, like, not immediate, but then, like, as you're starting to, like, ripple out further, members of my family, like, that are extended, I would say the less I see them, the more anxious I am when I do see them, because I think there's this inherent thing inside me that's like, I need to make sure to the best out of this visit or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And so then I'm like, oh, but what if I don't know the right things to ask about? Like, what
What
you know
have
I
I
mean?
done since last time that makes it feel like I'm living a life over here? How do I prove that I'm the human outside of, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or even
And-
how do I word things in a way that makes sense to them?
Yeah.
Of like how the anxiety of trying to connect.
Especially
Right,
because
yeah.
family are like, we don't choose family. So even if we love them, that does not mean we have a single thing in common with,
sure, yeah.
the bigger like picture of family. So that can definitely be hard, being like any other room we walk in, we're walking in with like-minded people that we've chosen to be in this room. Family things, like we're showing up because that's what we do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What about you, Russ? Because I know obviously like your family dynamic, because of just like how like spread apart your family is, as far as like you have like your mom's side, you have your dad's side, and then
Yeah. I mean, we've talked about it in past episodes, but like, I feel like mine is somewhat all inconsistent, I will say, where like the older I've gotten, the more that I've learned what to bring to like a family gathering or just what to bring to an interaction with family, of like thinking about those things of like, okay, what can I talk about to fill them into my life that will make sense to them? Because sure, I live this weird, wacky, whatever life that's not just work 9 to 5 and watch football at night. So I'm like, how do I tell them what I'm doing and make it make sense? So I've like I guess there's like a subtle anxiety that can come with how can I connect with them so it doesn't feel so weird and disconnected and all that sort of stuff. Because like we've talked about before, even though I do often feel very disconnected from my family, it's not necessarily in the worst negative way where like, I'm like, oh, I don't care about them, they don't care about me. I deeply, deeply love all of my family members, like deeply. But it almost kind of carries a heavier burden of going into situations with them where I'm like, I want to connect with you so bad.
I want to make this meaningful. I want to make every visit so meaningful, but we're so different.
Yes, and they mean well, but they're not exactly going to feed into that, right? Like recently, I went to one of my little sister's weddings. And this was also the first time that Krista was meeting some of my family. It turns out there wasn't a lot of my immediate family there anyway, so, you know, we didn't have to dive into the deep end too quick. But, like, even the family that was there, it wasn't, like, rattle your bones anxiety, you know, where I was, like, on edge the whole time. But I was, like, a little anxiety-ridden because I was like, man, like, I don't know how they're going to act in this situation. Of one, you have the burden of, I want Krista to have a good time.
Yeah.
I want her to feel welcomed and accepted. And obviously, it's also a wedding, so no one's necessarily in their most clear communicative. It's chaos. Everybody's running around, right? But I had it in the back of my mind where halfway through the wedding, I kind of checked in with myself where I was like, you're being a little negative right now, because kind of an anxiety voice was telling me a little bit. I was like, I'm waiting for someone to do something dumb, actually. Like, that's kind of what I was waiting for, because I know, you know, I know my family members very well, and I know especially once you get some beers in you, you're going to start saying some shit and doing some stuff. And I'm like, not only do I not want to deal with that, because the normal anxiety of family interactions of, I'm way different, I react and interact with you far differently, and I don't love the weird sarcasm, or I don't love the just general disconnection that we might have. It's not how I communicate. But also now I've got a girlfriend, I've got a partner here who is meeting you for the first time, and I want her to like you, and not that she really wouldn't, but more so I want you to like her, and I want there to be a cool interaction or whatever. And it almost like,
there's a lot riding on that for sure.
There is, and maybe that's too specific of a situation, but like that's something that's most fresh in my mind, where like it was something where the anxiety took over a little bit, where the whole time I was just kind of on edge of like, somebody's going to say something stupid. They're going to do this or blah,
just
blah, blah.
The what if.
I kind of just went to the negatives. Like, the anxiety took me to the negative side, where like halfway through the night, I was like, internally, I was like, I'm being a little bit of a dickhead right now.
I'm being a little bitch right now.
Like, kind of. Like, I was like, I'm like expecting the worst out of this, which... social anxiety, right?
And I do that too sometimes with like the anxiety internal. You'll start like seething over something that's not even happening.
Yeah, and then it ended up being just a fun and magical night. And was it, you know, could I use that example of that story I just told you as a shining example of, oh, I'm very opposite from a lot of my family, and I didn't feel the perfect connections that I would have loved in that moment? Yes, 100%. I literally was like, I feel like I got invited to someone else's wedding, sort of. I'm like, I don't even know half the people here, and the people I do know, I don't know how to connect with. Like, it felt weird. But like navigating that line of like not letting it dictate how I interacted with other people, like I had to check myself. Yeah. Like I said, halfway through the night, where I was like, no, just do what you would normally do, be you, and don't just assume the situation is going to go really bad. I don't know if that was even a good example of what we're talking about.
No, it was
Did
for
it
sure.
make sense?
Yeah.
Tell me.
You clearly had a lot of social anxiety that night.
Yes. And now and this is me not dumping it out. You're like, nope, yep, this is exactly what we're talking about.
That does make sense.
It does. And then the reasoning behind it, though, makes sense, too. Like, it's justified completely, because I think the first time that any kind of significant other meets, like, your family, it's like they're seeing a part of you that you can't control, because you can't control your family, and you can't control where you came from.
And you want them to magically show the part of them that you love. And that's not their everyday. That's not this in the moment. And so you're just like...
it's a wedding, so you also want the wedding to go well.
Yeah,
you know, so it's like you're in the back of your mind where I'm like, I want my little sister's wedding to be amazing, and I hope nothing goes wrong. And also my girlfriend's here for the first time. And oh my God, like, so yeah, I would say more of a direct example of the family thing. But again, we've taken the deep dive on past family episodes of like the general kind of disconnections and the oddness and the uncomfortableness sometimes of, man, I don't know how to express to you my undying deep love for you.
Yeah.
But I don't know how to express it to you because I feel like we speak different languages and we live on different planets.
Yeah.
And so again, family being a direct, like, yeah, in most situations, I can't say I carry a ton of social anxiety, or more so, I don't let it dictate how I am in that situation, even if I feel it. But I feel like family is one that, like, 50% of the time I'll have a good hang on.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like I'll visit family and I'm like, hey, I actually did pretty good with that interaction. I did a good job. That felt good. That was a good day with them.
Yeah.
And then other times I'm like, you fucked that up. What the hell? Like, yeah, you were the alien you think you were.
You know what?
Talking
And they
like,
might just be like, Ross is a little weird, so when he gets here, just like do your best with him. You
he's
know
gonna
what I
tell
mean?
you about a new podcast. So
Yeah.
just nod your
Just
head.
nod
and
your
say,
head.
"Great."
Yeah.
Yeah.
And because I think we all, and we've talked about this on other episodes, like what I deem character glitches, where it's just like, yeah, your one uncle just always makes that fucking joke. You know what I mean? It's just like people see me and they're like, yeah, she's gonna probably talk about Taylor Swift. Just nod your head and like
Right.
she'll move on eventually.
Yeah.
I just think that, especially with family, I think you're too aware of what you could dive into, and most people just like dive into it. But
Yeah.
you want to make sure that they care about what you're talking about, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, because I'm also like, I don't want to sit here and make our visit all about like, oh, this and that, and you're like, I don't fucking know what you're talking about. Like, you know, it's like, at least I need to know you're generally interested before I like, because I want to share with you,
Yeah.
to make that connection, to fill you in, to update you. But also, I know that I'm like, how do I explain this
Yeah.
in a way that's not me being like, well, and then the business profit and the blah, blah, blah.
Right.
They're just like, what the fuck? Like, you're not rich. Shut up. So we don't care. Like,
If you're not giving us money, you need to shut the
when
fuck
you're
up.
rich and famous, we'll really
We'll
like
talk.
what you do.
Yeah.
But for
then,
right now,
then you can
it's-
talk about whatever you want, and
Yes.
we'll just let you keep going.
Yeah, I'm sure we can make this whole episode about family stuff. I would love to dig into friend stuff a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because we mentioned like, okay, like friends compared to family. Obviously, you take maybe a different or a similar case of what social anxiety can be. I feel like this maybe opens up the floodgates to a whole other
Yeah.
realm of things. Like, but where do you guys land with the anxiety of situations with friends? I guess maybe whether it's one-on-one or groups. I feel like I would get it more in groups because it's almost less controllable.
So I have no social anxiety about hanging out with my friends, showing up and being at like events with my friends. My social anxiety comes from this was almost in the pet. I was almost going to put this in the pet peeve. I remember what everyone says all the time. I've said that a lot on this podcast. It is
remember.
a curse to me
And I forget everything.
because you never do this thing that I'm going to say. A lot of the time, people forget what they've told me and then they'll change their opinion or like something like that. And I just don't know how to, like, I almost feel like I'm going to be trapped in something depending on like the conversation where they'll like start talking good about something that you were talking poorly about last time, but they don't remember. And I'm like, is this a trick? And it puts me in a place where I feel like people don't remember anything I say. So then when I get into these situations, I'm like, love hanging out with my friends. And if it depends. I think it would be more of like the group settings where I'm just like, I don't know who I'm going to get from the people that I know. Because people don't remember everything and they shouldn't have to. But unfortunately, the way my brain works, I'm like, is this person going to all of a sudden be on this side of this thing?
Yeah, well, you know, also, sorry to interrupt you, but like the thing about the group settings though is like, I feel like you never know what friends might kind of chameleon themselves
Yes.
depending on the setting or who else is around. That I feel like is a thing I've experienced a lot in the past.
That
where
is
it's like,
literally pretty much what I'm talking about.
Okay, yeah.
And
where
they'll
it's-
even do it to me with it because they just don't remember,
Right.
I guess, who they were last time I saw them. But
Right.
for me, I'm never like upset with them because I genuinely no one would do it. Like if they remembered what they would say, like obviously that's just not something that people would do, but I have to like check myself and just like let it go. Cause it's another one of those me things, but I'm always like, do I remind you of what you said? Are you going to like, I can play stupid. This is the part, that's the anxiety part where I'm like, well, I can play stupid in this conversation.
Yeah.
But I feel weird because it's like, this is the opposite. And this happens to me like all the time.
That makes a lot of sense.
So it just like puts me in this weird, like, I'm like, I don't want to like be disingenuous, but I also don't want to always be the person that's like, remember when you said this? Because that's annoying. But I also like,
Right.
why does no one remember anything they say to me?
Yes.
And it's all, friends want to talk about opinions, and people have like strong opinions about stuff. And it's just, I always feel like
There's been a couple times where I have taken the leap of being that person in the past. I feel like I run into it a lot less now, but in the past, a couple of those times where like people were talking about something and exactly what you're talking about. It was like, man, a couple weeks ago you were telling me the exact opposite, and now we're around these people.
Yeah.
And I remember actually kind of calling it out. Like, actually, I remember a couple weeks ago you said this thing, not in like a confrontational way, but in a kind of a, hey, remember actually? And like in those moments, they like are surprised that you remember, and they were just like, what? Why would you even say that?
Yeah.
And then they just go back to whatever was happening, and it's like, oh wow, like you either have no recollection, and you were just feeding into what you thought maybe I wanted to hear at that point in time or something, and now you're feeding into what this other person in the group wants to hear.
Well, and it also just makes it feel like the conversations that we had weren't meaningful. And so the anxiety part of it is that I know, like when I take a step back, I don't care that people change their opinion. I don't care that they don't remember what they said. I don't care that the opinion's totally different. My body does. My body is like, that's wrong. Is this person
strange.
lying? Like, and it's
Are they
so-
lying to me, or are they lying right now?
And it's like such a small, like, real world thing that's really happening, but my body is like, oh, that's not correct.
And
That's
probably,
not.
probably because you don't have the clarity on if it is an opinion thing.
Yeah,
right?
like
Opinions
they've
can
changed
change,
it. Yeah, I have
but there's no clarity on like, oh wait, I'm hearing why you think differently now and why you're acting differently.
And it
Okay,
would be
cool,
one
this
thing
is,
if they
you know.
started by saying, I used to think this, but
Yeah.
now I think this.
Right, yeah.
But it's like, oh, I love the Harry Potter series, when they were just like, Harry Potter sucks.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
sometimes I remember because it's like they'll shit on something that I love, and then they'll be
Yeah,
like,
and you're
oh,
like-
I wish I got tickets to that thing, and I'm like, well, I didn't ask you because you hated it last time we talked, and like it confuses. It's so weird. It confuses my body. I feel like it's something I need to like grow out of, or maybe stop remembering everything. I like wish that I could stop remembering everything. And it's not that I constantly think about it. It's that the second that someone says something, I can remember the opposite thing immediately.
So we might have talked about this before in this show, but like I can be forgetful of random things, but stuff like that, like I'm very similar. I really do. Like I'll forget. I know you told me you watched the Chucky movie 100 times, and I forgot every time we talked about it.
Yeah,
But-
not like important stuff though.
But like random things of like, oh, I actually remember this when this person said this thing. And I would, probably because of some social anxiety in friends groups, I would dumb myself down and play stupid and act like I never remembered, except for moments where I tried it, like the example I just gave a few moments ago, where I'm like, I'm going to see what happens when I address this. And it's always like belittled and pushed aside. And I'm like, oh, I guess I am just going to continue playing dumb.
Well, yeah, and you just want to know
But,
if if it's an intentional conversation. Like, it's fine if everyone wants to have fleeting conversations with me, but I'm under the impression that every conversation is important with every single person.
Because, yeah, I want to care.
Yeah.
Like, even if it is just having fun, it's not that everything has to be
and you
world,
don't have to
whatever.
remember it, but like,
Yeah.
be honest when you have the conversation. So when we circle back,
I did this weird thing where, like, again, I would attempt it to be like, no, I remember this thing. And then when it would kind of get treated as like, you're weird or stupid for remembering that, I spent probably years dumbing myself down almost.
you're
where
like, I must have remembered that
and
incorrectly.
like, I should just stop worrying about whether I remembered it or not, or, whatever, don't. And in recent years, or maybe not years, but recent history, I guess, I have actually tried to allow myself to build that back up and be like, it's okay that you remember weird shit. Because I also sometimes have a small bit of social anxiety with somebody where I can't remember if it was Pet Peeves episode or this conversation just a little bit ago. Here I am. I don't remember. But like when you don't want to correct somebody, when they say something wrong and you're like, do I correct them
Yeah.
or not? There's
Yeah.
that little bit of social anxiety that comes with that where I'm
That's literally what I'm talking
yeah,
about.
I'm like, do I be am I weird if I'm like, actually what you said was this, I for some reason remembered it.
yeah.
But
The continuity.
I've had to like allow myself to rebuild that skill and be like, okay, no, this is something you did remember. So it's okay to correct that person or say, actually, a couple weeks ago you said this. And then most of the time people are like, huh? Like,
Yeah.
what?
I
Like, very
feel like I'm just
seldomly.
like constantly running into that. Like, I have to either decide, am I going to correct them? And not that I care to do that, but the other option is I'm going to get really quiet because I'm really confused.
Yeah, 'cause
and
I
that's
don't
where
know
all
what
the
to do.
anxiety comes from, because I'm like,
Right.
I just don't, what was the point? One of these two things, it was pointless to say. Which one? Which one do you
Yes.
want me to let go of?
Right.
And it's such a silly thing, but it's just like it's almost everyone.
Yeah, because you're like, I don't want to be the person who thinks they're right all the time, and I don't want to be the. But it's like, no, I
And
remember this
it's little
random
things,
thing
and I don't care because I love to lie, and I get that.
Yes, of
but
course.
I think that sometimes it's like, it's just so many people have such strong opinions, and I'm going to remember your strong opinions. I'm
I
going
was
to try
gonna
to
say, if it's
avoid
like-
those things.
Yeah.
And then I see you again and you love that thing or
Yeah.
whatever. It's just so confusing to me. I just
What I
don't ever
do
know who
is-
I'm going to get.
I don't think I've ever been like sincerely bothered by remembering that somebody said something the opposite of what they're saying it is now, because to me, I just take that moment and it goes into a bank in my mind of like, okay, I can see how you are as a person.
I'm seeing a pattern.
Yeah.
here.
I'm seeing, oh, you conform to who you're speaking to, or it could have been, oh, maybe they changed their mind about this thing. But if it was something so different from what they said in the past, I make a mental note of it sort of. And I just go, I don't know if this is like a stretch or if this feels extreme, but I go, oh, I can't trust this person to be consistent.
It's erratic behavior kind of that you see, or inconsistencies that you're like, well, I don't necessarily know how much I should give you because you're a very like I feel like a lot of people, what I at least tell myself is like, so many people are so just in the moment thinkers.
Sure.
So
Yeah,
it's
they don't
just
even care what they're
reactionary.
saying. They don't know
No.
what they're saying.
It's just
and no one I'm
reactionary.
talking about is like my close friends that I see like often or anything. This is more so like people that like I'm going to catch up a couple times a year. And that's why it's hard, because like if I only see you like once every few months and you are just shifting all of the things that you said last time, and you know, it's really, that's what's overwhelming, is like I just don't know how to go into those scenarios. And I do usually bank it. I'm just like, okay, well,
Yeah. I just, like I said, I put it in the bank, whether it's them changing their opinion, them having some like weird complex of having to be a certain person for certain people, whatever it is, I just make a mental note of like, that's different.
yes.
But I think I don't think that's weird at all, because that's another thing that I will take mental note of, again, that sporadicness, the inconsistency, where I'm like, I remember how you were about these things 2 months ago, and now you're saying something that's the opposite, or you're pretending something that now is not a big deal that 2 months ago you were acting like is a big deal, right? And especially like people that I, work with or work alongside in certain projects, like, obviously anonymously, I can think of a direct example right now where there's somebody who I never know what version of them I'm going to get, and we work on things together. And there will be things where I'm like, it's not worth the energy to bring up to say, actually, your opinion on this thing a month ago was the exact opposite of what you're saying now. But because they're so abrasive and they're so like in the moment thinking of like whatever just happened is the most important thing, I've taken a past mental note, put it in the bank, where I'm like, man, I'm seeing how you operate now. And I also, based off of that assessment, can say, I don't think it's worth my energy to be the corrector, to be the,
Yeah.
actually, let me remind you before we do that. It's like, in those situations, sometimes I'm like, fuck it, I'm sitting back. I'm just going to let you rant and ramble and say chaotic stuff that in 2 weeks you're going to change. And I'm just going to kind of follow along with the chaos and play my part.
And there's
because-
so many people like that, and that's totally fine that they're like that. And people
Of
could look at me and be
course,
like,
yeah.
okay, stop fucking remembering everything I say. It's not that big of a deal.
everybody's
and
got
I
their
really
thing.
wish I could.
Yeah.
I smoke weed every day and it's not killing my memory. So should I try something harder? Like, I would love to not remember
Oh my gosh.
I would love
most
to not
things.
remember.
I would say as far as like a one-on-one, I don't really get anxiety when it comes to, I would say maybe seeing people that you haven't seen in a while. Sometimes I'm afraid, like, what if I haven't been paying close enough attention to what's been going on in their life and I don't remember like what to ask, like, oh, how are things with, whatever. Oh, I'm not doing that anymore. I haven't been at that job. And you're like, oh crap. Like, I feel like that stuff happens to me a lot where I don't want to feel ingenuine by not knowing what's going on
Yeah.
with people if I haven't seen them in a long time. But that's the whole reason we're getting together is
Yeah.
because we haven't seen each other. I have no idea what's going on in
We
their
are
life.
catching up. That's the point. Yeah.
But I'd say one-on-one, that's probably the only thing I can really think of, other than like, I don't know, if it were somebody who I just knew didn't want to be there. Like, you know, when you
Yeah.
have like kind of like the negative person, you know, where you're just like, oh, I can tell that you didn't want to be in the, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I am dreading everything until I get there. Everything. But once I'm there, I'm like, oh, this is so great. Why was I feeling that? But it's just like, it's just anxiety. Like I am just gonna deal with that forever.
That literally is something that I have lately taken more account of, where I'm like, for some reason, there's been a lot more scenarios where like I go into them allowing myself to slip into some pessimism, like the wedding thing. You know, the whole first half, I'm like, what's going to go wrong? Who's going to say something dumb? Or like going into some recent events that I've been a part of putting together. I'm and again, doing an event obviously is going to bring you anxiety of like you want it to go well, so you're going to find reasons to why it won't. But like still, even just going into them, I'm like, man, fuck this. I shouldn't have done this. This is so like whatever. Why did I do this? It's so dumb. And then obviously when you get there, you're like, it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. But that's another thing that I've actually been trying to keep myself in check with, where I'm like, where is this random pessimism probably spawning from extra anxiety
Yeah,
that
it's
I'm feeling
literal,
about things?
yeah.
100%. Yeah.
Like, where is this all of a sudden spawning from where I'm almost leaning first into the negativity of the situation? Probably to, you know, because we do that, I think, to probably gear ourselves up.
Yeah.
So that way, if it does go
Worst
bad,
case
like,
scenario.
I knew it. I'm prepared. You know, that very, like, I got to be in control of things.
Yeah. I think being in control of things is such a big part of that's where anxiety, at least for me, always resides from. And I think with friendships, especially, like if I'm hanging out, even if it's one-on-one or lots of people, but more often lots of people, if I'm hosting something, I almost never make a plan. I will like go and do things if I'm invited, but I will hardly ever make a plan because I'm so anxious about if everybody's having a good time and if I planned something well enough and if it was organized enough
Yeah.
and if it was at the right time of the day and if everybody enjoyed the activity that I chose or the movie that I picked for us to all, like, did I bring the right snacks? Is so and so going to be there so that this person has their comfort person? Like, I feel like we used to have this is an example that I feel like is good for just like large groups. Years ago, like before I even met Nick, he always used to have a Halloween party here. And then it became like, once I moved in, it slowly became like the Halloween / my birthday party. And so it was so much fun when we were younger. And then as we got older, it's like, you know, you're inviting less kind of like random people. Like people aren't bringing like groups of people anymore. So it's like, oh, it's like a gathering of like closer people. And I'm worried about everybody having a good time. And if I'm being a good host or whatever.
When it's a full-on party, it's like everyone is doing their own thing.
Yeah.
So
I'm
when
like,
it's
we used to
smaller-
literally like people would show up. There'd be like Jello shots on the ceiling. Like somebody was passed out like in the backyard. Like it would be like a big party, you know, like when you think like
A bash.
a house party.
Yeah.
Project X. over here.
Yeah. And so it's just funny because now I'm like, oh my gosh, like what if I didn't bring enough chips? Like,
yeah. Will
Yeah,
everyone be out of my house by 11 p.m.?
And is everybody going to leave this and be like, wow, she did a great job. She like made sure we were all like taken care of. Or are they going to be like, the party sucked? Like
that is a very weird thing. Like when you're with either like a partner or friends or whatever, and you go either like a party is an example, but like also when you go to do something, like go to the movies or go to a market or a show or a concert or, you know, whatever. I carry this weird anxiety of like, if it was, not even if it was my idea, actually, when I really think about it, I carry this weird anxiety that something weird's going to happen wherever we are. And I'm like, is this other person that I'm with going to have a good time? Like the good time thing of like, you're so concerned about whether what their experience is going to be. And I don't know why I do that, but I do that.
It's a form
like,
of being a people pleaser.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like when I go to the movies, for example, if I go to the movies with somebody,
You're like, did you like that movie?
and I'm also like, was the person several rows down constantly crunching on their things or checking their phone or being too loud? I'm like, okay, I can probably handle that. And that's kind of annoying me, but what do they think? And now we're going to have to talk about how weird this was. Like those are weird, subtle things of anxiety that pop up to me where I'm like, oh no, I do want these people to have a good time, and if this comedy show isn't that funny or it's kind of weird, I'm like, oh fuck, like that sucks. Or the
Yeah.
concert's kind of weird, or we ran into a really weird person. Like
And
things
a lot
that are
of it-
completely
and-
out of my
Yeah.
control.
And back to sort of the performance aspect, that's the, you know what I mean? Like when you're standing up there, that's what stage fright is you're sitting there going, what if I make it so that everybody has a bad time?
yeah. The
Which
worst.
is so funny because like that would be so hard to do, like unless you just start like a fire. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? It's
Yeah,
all just like
yeah.
a blip in what's happening, but you're like,
Exactly.
okay, it's my time to
Well,
shine.
and that's like Krista and I went to Whose Lines Anyway live recently.
Fun.
And like, I mean, it was amazing. I had already been by myself before, like top 3 favorite things I've ever done in my life. Like, I'm watching other people do comedy, but for some reason in the back of my mind, I'm like, because someone else is here with me and I want them to enjoy it, for some reason tonight they're gonna suck, I bet. Like, I'm like, oh, it's gonna be so weird, or the audience is gonna get bad suggestions. Like, I don't know why
Yeah.
that, like, I want this other person to have as
Yeah.
good of time as I will.
And it needs to be this as up to par as like the last time. Like it needs
Yeah,
to be like
and-
the same show. We need to make sure that.
So
yeah,
like
it's like-
audience participate well. Like, what the
Yes.
hell?
I was talking about this with somebody literally earlier today. It's like sort of the, okay, I'm going to send you a song and I want you to listen to it. Like, you know, like when somebody sends you something, or if like on the side of the person sending, like, I want to make sure that you felt the thing that I felt when I
Yeah.
did this thing. When I
Yeah.
watched this movie, I got so freaked out. I want you to watch it, and I want to be there with you so that I can watch you freak out
Correct.
and experience this thing. And it's like, but that's where that pet peeve comes in of like they're on their phone during the movie that you
Yeah.
wanted them to watch so bad, and you're like, they're missing this part that I was like so
Yeah, and you're like,
waiting
yeah.
for, or like, oh yeah, they're like talking through this part of the song and I love these lyrics right here. And that's like, yeah, you take like little things that have touched your soul and you're like, here, please enjoy
It's-
this the way I
yes.
enjoy this.
and the anxiety of how it connects with them.
and the
follows with
anxiety
that.
of somebody taking that little ball of joy and just like like
kind of just dropping it.
Yeah.
Like, oh shit, yeah, I mean, that was cool. And you're like, fucking no,
that was my life.
my soul. And we touched on this a little bit, but I think one of the last things is like our anxiety in these public situations
Yeah.
that we're talking about, of like
Yes.
going and like things that you can't really control. Of I can't control the audience participation at a
You
Whose
sure
yeah,
Lines
cannot.
Anyway
especially
thing.
like you have even less control when it's strangers. When it's your friends, like you can
Yeah.
almost expect, like if you're bringing somebody to meet your friends, like a new friend, bringing them to the friend group, you can almost be like, I know these people well enough that like this
Yeah.
should go well.
I definitely trust like my friends to be able to like I can.
Yes.
But yeah, taking
Strangers though, it's completely just like there's no way to predict any of the outcome of anything that's going to happen. Like
right.
that's the most unpredictable.
And I guess we kind of touched on this point kind of at the open of the episode when we talked about a very general public anxiety or what that looks like. Like, is there anything that you feel like we didn't touch on at the beginning that you're like, actually, I want to dive deeper into this? Like, because again, I'm like, oh, well, I've done public speaking events in front of a bunch of people, and that felt like, yes, there was anxiety there, but it was also mixed with excitement, and it ended up being fine. And once I personally get into those situations, I am like, I'm confident that I can own this. I'm going to kill it. This is going to be great.
For sure.
But, and again, Leah, like your examples of like, you've played plenty of shows and
Yeah.
done all this stuff of like, oh, I don't want to be dumb in between these songs, but I also know that I'm going to kill the songs at least. Like,
yeah.
And I guess, are there any things that we feel like we didn't dig into when it comes to like, I guess maybe we talked very performative, but like,
Yeah.
what about just like being in, like, do you walk into a place like Brittany went to Salem recently? Like, were you walking around the streets of Salem like, there's so many fucking people here. Oh my God, I don't want to
Yeah.
do this. Or
So
like,
I can get very overstimulated, but like for Salem, for an example, like I can get overstimulated if it's not something I was prepared for. I knew going to Salem that I was a part of the crowd. Like
Yeah.
even if it's a big crowd, even if there's no room, I am a literal part of it, and I chose to be a part of it. So I don't get much anxiety about that. But like if I go somewhere and like a crowd rushes in, or like working at the mall was its own thing. There were multiple like lockdowns, things like that, to where you have to start like rewiring your brain. Where's the nearest exit?
yeah.
Stuff like that. I'm definitely more aware of like exits and escape plans. I try really hard not to like get somewhere and be like, okay, where's the exit? But the second I see or hear something a little bit funny, then I'm immediately like on those things.
See, she's like, oh my gosh, I'm ready to be attacked. And I'm like, oh, well, no, what if there's toilet paper on my shoe? Like, that's the kind of anxiety I get, is like, oh no, what if I'm walking stupid? Like,
That's fair. That's fair.
Brittany's like, zombie outbreak plan.
no, I'm like, I wish that was what I was thinking about, sort of. You know what I mean? Because that's almost like cool. Like, you're like, I'm ready at any moment for whatever's to come, and I'm literally just standing there like, what if my hair's messed up? Like,
See, I could use a little bit of like caring how I'm perceived in public, because I will literally just like go out in like my pajamas, and I can't sense, and this is probably similar to you, but you might have taken it differently. I got tattoos very young, and so there's all, especially like in 2013, no one was as tattooed as they are now. I wasn't even, but starting to get tattoos. Everyone was staring. Everyone was making a stink face. Every old person everywhere. Everyone had something to say to the person they were with. Very, very early on in my like teenage years to early adult years, I stopped like seeing people out in public. I stopped seeing like how people perceived me because it didn't feel good. And so then I was able to turn it off, and I literally have just never turned it back on. Like, I have to be told unless it's something weird, and that usually has nothing to do with me. But I have to really be told if like something funky is happening and someone is like being weird, because I don't care.
I have a weird mix of like, I don't care, but it's constantly on my mind as to whether people are looking at me and thinking something.
If I'm in my car, I am like,
it doesn't change what I'm doing necessarily, but I am like
a little aware of it,
looking at me and thinking that I'm stupid and blah blah blah. I'm not gonna do anything about it, but like, you know,
who here thinks I'm stupid?
Who's looking at me kind of wrong right now? And they're like, it's because you have toilet paper on your shoe.
And yours is probably like your OCD too.
Mine's definitely that, and I think a lot of it too. Like, I remember specifically one time I was grocery shopping for. I was making dinner for my boyfriend at the time, and we were like staying at this like cabin or something, and I was like, I'm gonna make dinner, and you guys know me, like, I don't cook, and so I was like, it'll be fine, I'll just follow these recipes, whatever. But as soon as I got to the grocery store, I don't know why, but this is another one of those things, everyone at the grocery store is my enemy. I don't understand why, but I just feel that way. And I was like, these people are staring at me. They know I have no idea what I'm doing. I had so much anxiety, and then I got in my car, I loaded my groceries, I sat back, and I just like was like and I saw myself in my rearview mirror, and I was like, I have purple hair. Yeah, people are looking at me like I'm stupid, but like those are the kinds of things where like it's just silly stuff where I'm like, oh, of course people, like I have tattoo, like you said, like of course people are going to be looking at you.
Yeah,
and, like,
it just like comes with the territory.
And yeah, I feel like I've moved past maybe that part, but like I think more than like the anxiety of like feeling, I feel like when I'm in crowds, like big crowds, I'm not worried about like, oh, how do I get out of this situation or things like that. It's more just like almost like the sensory overload.
Yeah.
Of just, there are so many bodies, and being down where we are, you can't see anything. Like, we were in line for this haunted house over the weekend, and everybody was joking around about like how it's so dark where I was, because the lights where the lights were placed and everything, and everybody was so tall, and everybody was like getting down to my height, and they're like, oh my God, you can't see anything. And I'm like, no, it's just bodies. It's just bodies everywhere. And I think that for me is an anxiety thing of
that,
just like,
it is suffocating.
Nobody knows that I'm right here.
Yeah. When you're in a crowd, you literally are like eating shoulders.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a lot.
Ross, how many shoulders have you eaten in your life?
Several. I am a shoulder eater. Absolutely. 100%.
Good.
I feel like maybe if this is dumb, tell me. I feel like we can end this one. Yep. And see you later, everybody. I feel like this is one of those episodes where I feel like leaving on a little bit of like something that's worked for us type of advice would be good.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
So after unless there's any other major points with anxiety, we feel like we should dive into and all that. I feel like we covered a lot of stuff.
Yeah,
for sure.
But I feel like this is a good one to kind of leave with like, hey, all the things we just talked about, what has sort of maybe worked for you, or even maybe something that we're actively trying to make use of to combat any of the social anxiety we have felt in the past, or anything like
Something that I think that stuck with me, and it might seem silly, but it's kind of almost an example. Going back to those Halloween parties that we used to have, one year I invited a friend, and I remember specifically talking about it kind of like in the group of people. Like, I was so anxious to throw this and I was so nervous, like just talking about it out loud, and then hearing somebody else that literally, she was like, I passed your house four times before I pulled in your driveway. And I was like, that it's just,
everybody's
have to remember,
being human.
yeah, and it's, you just have to remember that you're not the only person that's probably feeling weird here. Like, there's so many people that have social anxiety. Like, you could think about, like, in that crowd of people, I mean, probably at least 30% of those shoulders were like, you know, had a little chip on them.
So true, queen.
Right?
Nice. Hey, slay.
Slay, queen, slay. Yes, absolutely. I think for me, mine would probably be a duo between, I need to stop telling myself I'd rather be dead than doing whatever I'm about to walk into while I'm walking into it. That is just a whole nother me that I have to fight every day. Because I do make those plans. Like, I know that I do want to do all the things that I say yes to. It is just the anxiety, and she knows how to tussle. And then the other one would be, I just simply have to get over remembering. I've got to get over it. And I have, because it's literally been like my whole life. I feel like it's like amped up the last few years. I don't know why that is. Maybe because as we get older, we have more intentional conversations. But I do just need to like go with the flow with that a little bit more.
This is going to be a crazy twist if when you're like 80, you get Alzheimer's and can't remember literally anything.
It's a likely place for me to be. R.I.P. Grandma. Way to go, Ross.
Push that button.
End it. We're done. We are done.
You're getting a lashing after this.
Okay, so
Don't
now
worry.
tell us what you would do differently.
Well, tell us what you think works, ass face. I feel like mine is a little bit of what Brittany said, of like the kind of making sure I don't go into situations with pessimism already. And that would kind of directly lean into kind of like control the controllable sort of thing. Of
and
like,
if you do feel it, just be like, oh yeah, that's what that is.
yeah, that's just, it is what it is. Things are as they are. Kind of the classic thing that gets thrown around on the internet everywhere now of like the two phases of nothing matters. You know, you can either be like, nothing matters, everything, or it's like, hey, nothing matters. No one knows that I just did that thing. And if they do think it's stupid, who cares? What does it do?
Ask yourself,
like,
who does it matter to besides you?
Yeah,
We're not
yeah.
as important as we'd like to think we are.
And it's the main
Yeah.
character syndrome. Like Leah said, like everybody in here had a weird thing that they did today that they're worried about everybody else in the room thinking if they noticed. Like, so yeah, it's just like, go into the situation not expecting bad or shitty things to happen, because it's like, what version of you are you taking into that scenario? That's also probably the energy you'll give out, which then means you can conjure some of those bad or shitty things that you're expecting anyway.
Yeah.
If you go into something negative, chances are
definitely going to be.
it's going to be negative.
It's
So
manifestation.
Yeah.
You can manifest negative things just the way you can manifest positive things.
Right. And so it's like just going into it like, yes, stay realistic of like, hey, I might need an escape plan here. If zombie outbreak happens, where's the exit? Or also like, if my family says this really weird thing, how can I make sure that I'm
Where's
kind of-
the exit?
Yeah,
Where's the exit?
also? Like how do I combat this, or what do I, what's my defense mechanism kind of thing, just in case. Like you can stay realistic with a situation of like, this could go wrong, but also don't go into a situation being like, it will go wrong.
Yeah.
It's like, no, what am I going to bring to this to make it a good time and control what I can and
It all goes back to the old prepare for the worst and hope for the best.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a great way to end this episode.
That's why I said it.
Hey, it's like we've
Hey,
done
no
this.
fighting, guys.
I was agreeing with her.
I'm going to hit the button.
Oh, okay. At Honestly Same Pod.
Please follow us at Honestly Same Pod. You can listen to us
Spotify,
at
YouTube, and Apple.
we have jobs now. Ross gave us jobs without telling us. Listen to this podcast.